Gentleman from Petersburg, Ms. Dance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for a point of personal privilege.
The gentlewoman has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, the delegate from Lancaster is in trouble with me because he did not let me know ahead of time. And, Mr. Speaker, it has finally gotten to the point when I recognize his cadence. If one would check, he's probably carried the most bills and has been able to move those bills all the way through. He stands on this floor and he talks, and I would challenge any of you to tell me that you can remember exactly what he says. He has a cadence about him, and it's rhythmic and it's under the tone, and he goes up and down, and you're trying to figure out what he's saying, and then he sits down, and so you go along and vote for that bill because you assume he must know what he's talking about. I've just mastered what he's been doing, and I've been watching him, and now he's gone. I haven't had a chance to practice to see if I can emulate some of the skills that he has. He is an awesome person to know, and sometimes he will do as he's told. Just vote. Don't you dare stand up and talk about that bill. Just vote. He will do that at times, too. He is going to be missed, and he is that voice of reasoning at times when we need it, the one that might be quiet, and then all of a sudden he just gives us this, challenges things. We're going to miss him and his little girl that comes and sits with him at times. But enjoy this freedom you have for a short period, because I'm sure that public service is not finished for you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentlewoman from Wythe, Ms. Rockestark.
Mr. Speaker, I rise for personal privilege.
Gentlewoman has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, I would say that Albert Pollard is truly an honorable gentleman, Virginia gentleman, Southern gentleman. He has made me want to visit the Northern Neck. I shall be there, and I still want the tour. And I would tell you that if I were 20 years younger, I would share my marshmallows with you under anybody.
I'd remind the gentlewoman from Wythe that they've got children in the gallery. The gentleman from Charlottesville, Mr. Toscano.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for a point of personal privilege.
Gentleman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I rise with some trepidation following some of the speakers who have spoke previously. You know, I haven't been here that long, and I've seen some giants of this body retire. I was here when the Delegate Kenny Melvin retired, and I remember very distinctly his speech on the House floor. I remember his speech talking about the night that Barack Obama was elected president. I'll never forget that speech and what it meant to him and his family. I've been fortunate. About a year ago, Delegate Pollard came to visit me to share with me a draft of a book he was writing about his experiences in the House of Delegates in public service. And I really got some great insight in what motivates my friend to do what he has done for many, many years. The book is really worth reading. I commend it to all of you. I've learned a lot about public service from Delegate Pollard in the time that we've served together, and it hasn't really been that long, but I have learned a lot. Our districts are very, very, very different. Our politics are very different and somewhat similar at times. But I've learned that when we come down here, it's more than just about serving our constituents, although that's very, very important. It's more than just sticking our finger in the wind, which is critically important sometimes. It's also about the broader issues of policy and how we move things forward. It's also about the Constitution, both the United States Constitution and our own Virginia Constitution. And I will greatly miss the delegate. I'll greatly miss his respect for the land. I'll greatly miss his love of the Constitution. And I'll greatly miss the love and respect that he has shown for this body during the time he's been here. I wish you the best of luck.
Gentleman Powhatan, Mr. Ware.
Mr. Speaker, I rise for a point of personal privilege.
Gentleman may proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I don't do this very often, but when a man like Albert Pollard leaves, I feel obliged to stand up. His respect for this institution, for the history of the government of the Commonwealth of Virginia, it arises not only from his pedigree, but from a deep-seated commitment to the things that matter. We don't, I think, sometimes show the respect that we ought to the chamber where we sit, to the people who've gone before us. But Albert has done that. He's embodied it in committee meetings. He's embodied it here on the floor in his friendships with so many of us. And it's shown in the occasion of his departure. What does he choose to do? He doesn't talk about himself. He talks about the things that matter, the things that endure, the things that are permanent and that will succeed all of us. We talk about independent voices, those who speak out of their own judgment, out of a reasoned and thoughtful understanding of the issues. There aren't too many independent voices, really and truly, in this chamber or the one down the hallway. One of them is the gentleman from Lancaster, Mr. Pollard. He's not predictable. And that's been part of the joy of working with him. Sometimes with him, not always, but oftentimes. We have been amplified by his presence. We will be diminished by his departure. It has been an honor for me to serve with you, Albert.
Gentleman from Fairfax, Mr. Plum.
I rise for a point of personal privilege.
Gentleman may proceed.
Speaker and ladies and gentlemen of the House, I sense that we're probably making Albert a little bit uncomfortable now, but I really do feel that I want to stand for a moment and say to Albert and to the House the importance and significance that Albert's played in my career here. And I've been here a lot longer than Albert, and I've seen a lot of people come and go, and I haven't stood up when many of them left. But I want to stand up today and say to Albert that, you know, back when we first met, you had a different role. You were a lobbyist running around the halls for the Sierra Club, and I was one of your few friends. In fact, you made me eco-hero, remember? And that's when we started working together on issues. But what I want to have the House understand, and to Albert to understand too, is how much I've come to appreciate and understand his ability to work across party lines and across geographic and regional differences and so on to help to bring people together. He's a man who has a firm commitment to what we're about in the House, but he's also a guy with a whole lot of savvy. Now, I will say that I have observed his savvy for a long time, and I think I have learned a lot about how it is a legislative process works. I'm sorry to say I've not always been able to apply it to the degree that you've been able to do it. But I want you to know that I stand in admiration of the work that you've done here, what you stand for, and I don't know what it is about the Northern Neck, Mr. Speaker, but it produces some fine legislators over the years, and Albert being one of them. So I wish Albert, and let me also say, the other thing I think is significant about today, ladies and gentlemen, is the fact that Albert has the strength and the fortitude to make a decision and to stand up today and say, you know, I've played a role here, but I'm going to move on to other things. Some of us may not be able to have the strength and fortitude to figure out when it is we ought to do that. But for a man who's able to do that, I think he deserves our great admiration and support. Best wishes to you and your family, my friend.
Gentleman from Newport News, Ms. McCoat.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and I want to say this to Albert, Delegate Albert. You were a gentleman who knew the art of governing is the art of negotiating. You were one that did that. But on the other side, a lighter side, I just want to say, don't leave before the pop-up award is given. I used to count it, and I think night before last, he stood up 13 times. So we will miss you, Albert, and thank you for your service. God bless you.
Say the gentleman from Lancaster, we all are going to miss you, and we really have appreciated having the opportunity to serve with you. I know that I'll continue to see you as I get down to that beautiful northern neck more often, and we appreciate all that you've done for the Commonwealth. The gentleman from Shenandoah, Mr. Gilbert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for, we'll call it the trifecta, a point of personal privilege, an introduction, and a motion, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, caught me off guard as well that the gentleman from Lancaster, and I want to tell a story about him real quick, so I hope he doesn't run off. He took me by surprise that he was leaving us. The body may recall that he reclaimed his seat in a special election, and a couple of us the night before the special election were here in Richmond and decided to go over and make some calls on behalf of our Republican candidate in that race. And I recall a number of calls that went something like the one I'm about to tell you about. I called an obviously elderly woman, and we were calling the Republican list, I'll tell the gentleman, trying to do some get-out-the-vote calls, making sure our folks knew that there was an election tomorrow and they should go vote for our Republican candidate. And I called this one woman in particular. She was an elderly woman, and I could tell at the end of the call that she had really heard nothing of what I had said other than there was an election tomorrow, because at the end of me telling her how great our Republican candidate was and how we needed her to go out and support our Republican candidate, she said, "Don't you worry, honey, I'm going to go vote for Albert tomorrow." We went home shortly after that, Mr. Speaker. But I do want to join with the body in that shows how well loved he was in his district and is and continues to be. We'll miss his articulate voice, his intellect, his mastery of the rules of parliamentary procedure. I suppose some folks in his caucus will especially miss that. And I think it's among the probably the greatest testament to his presence here was what I just heard from the gentlewoman from Wythe, Delegate Cougar Stark. And her admiration. Did I say I meant Crockett Stark, Mr. Speaker? I'm sorry. But we'll miss the delegate, and we wish him well.